Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital Front Door. I'm Scott Benedict, and today we're diving into the state of the wholesale club industry, one of the most fascinating and rapidly changing or evolving formats within retail, and one that I have an emotional attachment to since I spent more of my retailing career in the wholesale club business than in any other channel I've been involved in. So I'm excited to have this conversation today. Also excited because while the club industry continues to evolve and change to serve members in exciting new ways, both in terms of the commitment to omni-channel and the use and leverage of technology into the business, the format has really had some remarkable success both during and since the COVID-19 pandemic, and it remains a remarkable growth story right now. Joining me today is someone who has documented and analyzed this space for nearly 3 decades, Michael Klayman. Michael is the publisher of Warehouse Club Focus, and if you work with or sell into Costco, Sam's Club, or BJ's Wholesale here in the U.S., chances are you've come across Michael's deep dive data, competitive analysis, and really robust club-level insights. And his publication is really the go-to source for understanding the wholesale club formats, how they operate, and how they compete with each other. And Michael, we're excited to have you join us on the show today.
Thank you very much, Scott. That was very generous.
Well, it is so nice to have a chance to talk to you since I've been an avid reader of Warehouse Club Focus for years. And I want to start the conversation today maybe at a high level, at a kind of a macro level. And as I mentioned in my opening, all three of the major U.S. club operators have really seen a lot of strong revenue and membership growth since during the pandemic and even through to the most recent quarterly earnings reports that we've seen. From your perspective, as someone who's really watched the industry for years and years, what do you think is driving this?
Well, I'll talk about the pandemic in a couple minutes, but the most important item in the club channel, it has always been, is low prices. Members pay a membership fee to shop there, and they expect one thing: they expect to save money by shopping at BJ's, Costco, Sam's Club, and we also cover Price Smart, and we'll get to them a little later in the interview. But those low prices have to exist, simply because if members are not saving money by shopping at the clubs versus a grocery store or Walmart Supercenter, they're not going to pay, and the whole model won't exist, I don't think. The second most important factor is product quality. So when the business was started a long time ago, this wasn't the most important or the second most important thing, but it has developed over the years, especially since Costco got involved in the industry. And their belief, and BJ's and Sam's Club follow it to some extent, is that we're going to sell the highest quality products at the lowest possible prices, and no one can dispute the fact that we're providing a value to that member. And the combination of those two is really what enables Costco and BJ's and Sam's Club to differentiate themselves from just about any other retailer in the country. The two other factors are the membership fee, which I've discussed is a result of the low prices, but it provides the clubs with the ability to operate at those low margins and have some of that membership fee. It's reduced, but about 60 to 70% of that membership fee at BJ's and Costco, a little bit higher, maybe 80 to 90% at Sam's Club, flowing down the operating income. And the last aspect before I talk about the pandemic is treasure hunt. And what the clubs do with about 25, maybe 30, 35% of their products is they rotate them every 6 to 8 weeks. And it gives the perception that they're stocking a wider variety of merchandise when in fact they are not. So those four factors existed before the pandemic, still exist today, but the pandemic was kind of an accelerant to their success. One reason was they were mandated in some areas, but they were able to stay open during the pandemic. Number two, they were able to supply key items that people wanted during the pandemic. And their membership grew during this time because people began to trust them in a different way, I think, that their lives were being pressured and we could rely on BJ's and Costco and Sam's Club to supply us with the products that we needed. So the combination of those factors, pricing, quality, membership, and treasure hunt before, and the feeling that members got because they helped them during this very stressful time has propelled them, I think. And then you factor in the real estate aspect where some companies failed and then they were able to open up in markets or expand in markets that they weren't able to expand in before. But that's basically why they are doing so well today.
Neat. And it's been really remarkable to see that there's been a degree of staying power as the effects of the pandemic on the retail market overall have waned a bit, although inflationary pressures just made the value equation, it feels like, of the club channel that much more obvious to members or potential members. Is that
Sure? I don't want to like keep you on this one question, but that aspect with Sam's Club and Costco especially, and they've talked about it, is that their limited SKU count gives them the ability to not have to deal with the tariffs, for example, or rising prices because they can just get out of items or they can delete items that are not providing a value and bring in other items that are. And that limited SKU count enables them to do that.
Yeah, and I want to focus in a second on BJ's specifically. You've really tracked their strategy over the years, and in one of your recent issues, you outlined how BJ's is really leaning into private brands, private label, and to digital convenience. And I'm curious, on your perspective, what stands out to you about how BJ's is positioning themselves against Costco and Sam's Club from your view?
It's even more nuanced than that. And I want to take a step back. In 2011, BJ's went private. They were bought by a company. And I think in 2018, they came public. In that 7-year time period, they took on a lot of debt. The company that bought them paid themselves dividends and they used debt to do it. So while they were doing that, BJ's had to operate well and they had to operate financially well. So they raised their margins. I don't think it was intentional, but I think that fact enabled them to see maybe a nuanced approach to competing with Costco and Sam's Club on one side and Walmart and grocery stores on the other. And they said, we don't necessarily have to be at 11% margins, which is where Costco and Sam's Club are. We can be at, and where they are, and you can see in this chart, they're at 16.5% margins. They're 500 basis points higher than their club competitors, but still significantly lower than Walmart and grocery stores. So they still offer a value, number one, compared to what they consider to be their true competitors. At the same time, they're still competitive with Costco and Sam's Club on branded items. And the reason we know this is every October or September, October, we go to a market where BJ's, Costco, and Sam's Club, a grocery store, and Walmart operate within about 5 miles. And we find all the branded items, and there's actually not too many, that all 5 stock. It doesn't have to be the same package, but it has to be the same brand. And we compare the pricing. So this past year, there was about 150, 160 items we found. And BJ's was historically, and this past year, 2 to 4% higher on those branded items. So they're more competitive on items that Costco and Sam's stock, but they make more margin on items they don't. So that's why I say it's a little nuanced, it's a little high-low. And this is where their private label comes in, is that they're able to generate higher margins, most likely. You don't know exactly because they don't report it.
Right. And that makes sense. It's been interesting to see that, to your point, some cases they compete by not competing, at least not with their club competitors. They're more focused on grocery and mass and some others, and that's been their approach.
Their advertising comes through. They do advertising, and they talk about that specifically. They don't talk about Costco and Sam's.
Interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about Sam's Club, and in full disclosure, I've obviously of the three major chains, that's the one I've actually worked for. So
Yes.
I'm going to ask this question in a way that hopefully does not appear self-serving, but I'm really interested in your thoughts on Sam's Club's commitment to omni-channel strategy broadly, talking about blending physical and digital experiences, and some of the other ways that they are, it appears, using technology more aggressively than the two club competitors. I'm curious from your view, as someone who's tracked the development of the club channel for years and years, what's your take in how serious Sam's Club is about refining or continuing to kind of transform the club model?
I just want to put a little perspective on Sam's Club because, and you know this, over the years, they've changed their core philosophy in different directions several different times. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the same, but they've always tried to compete with Costco. Just to give you just a broad-based overview, in 2024, Sam's ended the year with 600 buildings in the U.S., did 90 billion. Costco ended with 617 units in the U.S., 188 billion. So two times as many. I mean, the same number of locations, two times as much sales. So, Sam's is focused on Costco, and they always have said, how can we differentiate ourselves? And this omni-channel approach is the latest iteration, but it might be the final iteration. You don't know. So given that, they're focused on convenience. They want their members to not only save on the products that they purchase, their margins. I think there's a chart through here that shows that their margins are basically the same as Costco. They just started reporting it at 11%. But they're layering in the convenience factor. So Scan and Go is a tremendous product that enables members to easily scan their items while they're shopping and not have to interact with any Sam's Club employees. Don't have to go through the register. They don't have to have their basket checked as they walk out, because Sam's instituted or introduced this new technology that scans the items as they walk through these huge arches. They just introduced pizza delivery through their own delivery service. They pick your orders for you and will deliver it curbside, and they pick your orders for you and with their own employees deliver it to you at your house. So there's all these things that they're doing as part of the convenience factor. The only hiccup that they could face is there's a cost to that. And what is Walmart as an overall company willing to allow Sam's to generate on the operating income percentage side, that because they're incurring these costs? Instacart is not coming into their buildings, and DoorDash is, and I think it's Sam's Club employees who are doing all these deliveries. So that's the only hiccup. Is the convenience factor enough to compete against Costco head on? It may not matter, because I think they're going to be selective as they expand and try not to head right into where Costco operates at its strength. They might try to find locations where there's a market that doesn't have a BJ's or a Costco. So I imagine that's going to be something that'll play out over time. But generally speaking, if the operating margin is acceptable because of the added cost, then it's probably something that they can stick. If it's not, then it's up for grabs. But it is very interesting, and it's very convenient. I don't have a Sam's Club near me personally, but when I do go, I always use Scan and Go, and it's a tremendous technology.
It is, and I've really started to use it more proactively, not only there but at Walmart as well, and I'm starting to embrace the convenience of it, particularly when you're not making too large of a purchase. One of the things.
Oh, and there's one other thing that Sam's Club does with it.
Please.
They actually offer additional discounts on select items that members use Scan and Go for. So if you buy Tide detergent, they might offer an extra $1 or $2 discount if you use Scan and Go to purchase this item.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and I've noticed Walmart, and I'm a Walmart Plus member in addition to being a Sam's Club member. I've noticed Walmart do that as well, and I assume that that's an incentive to get members to try this,
Absolutely.
or to be more comfortable with using it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that I would read that with a lot of interest in your most recent issue was you did a very detailed analysis of the business member focus of all three U.S. chains, and I think one of the key takeaways in your article was that of the three chains, Sam's Club was the most focused on business members, but all three were placing less emphasis on business members than they had in the early founding days of the club channel. And it was a really interesting article. And I'm just curious, what prompted you to do that analysis? Is that something that you've done over the course of years in Warehouse Club Focus?
We update it every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just time to update it. And I think the interesting part is from Sam's Club's point of view. The last iteration of their focus strategy was this wholesale consumer. And for a while, and they're reducing the assortments in some areas, but there was some very significant additions in key categories that food service members would want: wholesale products, janitorial, automotive. There was a whole set of business members that they were trying to reach. This was several years ago, that they added wholesale items for. Some categories still have it. The kitchen category, janitorial, to some food service SKUs, certainly some vending SKUs, but it's not as deep as it was. And I think what they found is that it was a challenge to have those items generate the sales volume that they wanted. And what all three clubs have found over the years simply is that consumer items are generating higher sales volumes. And as each club has reduced its SKU assortment over the years, and we'll talk about that, I think, later, the items that have fallen away are generally the wholesale focused items that just don't generate those sales volumes.
Interesting. I want to also talk about profit margins in the club format. In a prior issue, I believe it was the April issue, you did analysis and it showed that of the three chains, Costco was running the leanest gross margin rate among the three operators here in the U.S. I'm curious, what does that state about their operating philosophy, and is that a sustainable approach for them given how competitive retailing is broadly, and obviously the club channel is specifically here in the U.S.?
So Costco believes in one simple fact: low prices drive sales. And there's a chart that we can look at now that really exemplifies this. And this chart shows Costco's gross margin since 2009 every 5 years, and you can see they haven't changed. And on the right side of the chart, or the left side, depending on how you're looking at it, it shows the average annual sales per location, which over that same 15-year time period has doubled per location. And what has happened is, if you look at the SG&A as a percent of merchandise sales, is as they've reduced their SKU counts in the buildings, and we'll talk about it, but Costco stocks around 3,300 items, and we count them every year. They are much more efficient in those locations, so they don't have to add the amount of people and payroll dollars that you would normally think to operate a $260 million a year location. So as their SG&A percent of merchandise sales has dropped, their operating income percentage has increased, and it trails just slightly behind BJ's. And so what Costco is doing is their low prices are driving sales, which is enabling them to become simply more profitable. So to answer your question, this is ingrained in them. And if you ever see their margins tick above 11.5 to 12% on a consistent basis, as an investor, you would be concerned, I guess, is in a limited way. Although you think they're making more money, it's just not the philosophy. And I don't expect that ever to change. It's just part of who they are.
Yeah, it has been a pretty consistent aspect of their strategy and their approach since the days of Price Club, and certainly after Price Club and Costco merged back in the 90s. And to your point, the analysis shows it's just been rock solid, consistent in believing that approach is the right approach to that, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah. One of the other things that I think you have tracked a lot over the course of years is the difference in value perception in the club model. In other words, the difference between cost, or what at Walmart would be called opening price point, versus value. And I'm curious, from your view as someone who's tracked and analyzed the industry, can you explain the distinction and how it affects how suppliers should approach perhaps clubs broadly, or any one of the operators, versus other retail formats in terms of the types of items and the types of proposals that they bring to buyers in the club channel?
Sure. Cost to the club buyer means what's the lowest possible net landed price at a location, not a distribution center, but at a location, can I work with a vendor to get? That's the cost. Value means, from the member's perspective, how much are they going to save? What are they going to get by purchasing this item in comparison to purchasing this item elsewhere? How much are they going to save? How much, when I say get in terms of a product, you could have extra batteries in a product that needs batteries that the battery cost is not included. So there's different ways to achieve that value. Generally speaking, we believe BJ's is a little bit more focused on the cost factor, not because they're trying to drive down their cost and lower their prices, but they're trying to drive down their cost and give themselves the ability to make a little bit more money. Not excessive, but they do have those margins that are 500-600 basis points higher than Costco and Sam's Club. Costco and Sam's want to be able to provide their member with value, and that could be low prices, as I mentioned. That could be added items in the product package. That could be, for example, Sam's Club just announced, or not just announced, they've been working on it for a couple of years, taking out 40 bad ingredients in products, and I forget what they call it, but they've accomplished maybe 90, they've worked with vendors to get out 90% of these items in products that they're selling. So they're focused on higher quality. Organic plays into this value aspect. Instead of buying penny pasta, buy an organic penny pasta and sell it for the same price as a regular penny pasta. So there's different ways to achieve it, but Sam's and Costco, I think, are more focused on the value side, and BJ's a little bit more focused on the cost side to expand their margins.
Gotcha. And it makes sense, and certainly I've seen you track it, as well as I, obviously, as a former buyer, tracked it in the categories that I was involved in, and it's interesting that it has remained relatively consistent over the years. One of the things I've also seen you track and report on, Michael, over the years is the size of the assortment in the three major operators, the sheer number of SKUs in a building. And you referenced the fact that Costco traditionally has the fewest, BJ's typically has the most. I'm just curious about the broader assortment being a winning play in the club format. Does it risk confusing kind of the treasure hunt experience? Does it risk other parts of the model? What's your take on SKU count broadly, and maybe the way that all three operators operate historically over time in terms of the breadth of the assortment that they offer?
So this chart that we have shows the SKU counts over time over the last 20 years for each club. Mm-hmm. And it's the third line that I want you to look at, because we're not going to include books and crafts and jewelry and fragrances. But BJ's assortment in food and non-food has gone from 5,800 around to 5,200 currently, roughly. Costco, 3,400 to, we counted 3,100 in last year, but I think recently it's ticked up. There's different ways, you get different counts based on different locations, and maybe a larger location has more items, but it's roughly around 3,300 now. Sam's Club on the food and non-food side has gone from 3,800 to 3,500. So they've all reduced. There's more full pallet displays. It's easier to manage a building that's like that. To answer your question, and as it relates to BJ's, do they have the ability to stock more items and operate efficiently? And I think They do. I think they can rotate just as well on the treasure hunt side. But the problem they run into is the size of their buildings. They're only 110,000 square feet on average. Costco's average building is 145,000 square feet. The current new size is 162 to 165,000 square feet. And Sam's is still, I think, as they open new buildings, I think they're going to still be around 150,000. I didn't get the impression that the new building is going to be any larger than that, but I may be wrong on that. In any case, rotating through 110,000 square foot buildings for BJ's and stocking 5,500 items is definitely more challenging. But I believe it's what BJ's has as a competitive advantage versus the other two. And just strategically thinking, even if they reduced their private label assortment and went more on the treasure hunt side, I think they would be better served, because I think they would, there's tons of items out there. 5,500 compared to Walmart at what, 100,000? I don't even.
Yeah. A supercenter is generally around 100,000, I've been told.
Sure. There's tons of items, and they, focusing on a rotation with more spaces to be able to rotate more branded items through, I think is a winning strategy. Now, they have taken a different approach. Private label represents 18% of their current assortment, more or less. So they believe in that and they like the margins. But I personally believe that a little larger buildings, a little bit more branded rotations would serve them well.
Interesting.
So, but to answer your question specifically, yes, they can operate like this.
Good. And it seems like they've done it for a number of years and done it successfully. And to your point, it does differentiate them a little bit from their two club competitors, and maybe is intentional in terms of differentiating and making themselves perhaps interesting to a broader audience, particularly in the grocery side.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Well, take a little trip outside the U.S. and look internationally, and you reference PriceSmart. They continue to fly a little bit below the radar in terms of being as well known in retailing circles as the three U.S. chains, but they're really starting to show growth, particularly in Colombia and in Central America. For maybe folks that aren't as familiar with PriceSmart, what's the story there, and are they building kind of a new kind of warehouse club model in your view?
No, and for anyone who wants to sell PriceSmart, it's just like selling Costco. They operate in basically the same way, except for they're smaller. As I mentioned, Costco's average building size is 146,000 square feet. PriceSmart is at 50,000 square feet. I apologize. I should have wrote this down, but I think they operate 52 buildings right now in Central or Latin America and the Caribbean, and their average annual sales, again, I don't know why, is around $3.5 billion. So they're much, much smaller. But as you can see from this chart, they are extremely productive because of the simple fact is they focus on low prices and they want to drive sales. And I can explain in a second why they have that same philosophy. But if you look at PriceSmart in terms of sales per square foot, just below Costco. And even when you're looking at the weekly sales per item per club, they're above Sam's Club. So they are extremely, extremely productive despite the fact that they're very small. And the reason they operate like Costco is Robert Price, who with his father Saul started Price Club, and Jim Sinegal worked at Price Club before he started Costco, all came from the same business tree, which is learning under Saul Price. And since PriceSmart has existed, Robert has been involved as president and CEO sometimes, which he is right now, as chairman of the board of directors. His son is actually David Price, will be taking over the company in August. So there's this consistency with PriceSmart that is the same with Costco, where they're focused on low prices, they're focused on quality. And they're based in Miami, and for anybody who sells BJ's, Costco, or Sam's Club, it shouldn't be a difficult sell to go down there. Actually, they're based in San Diego. They have distribution in Miami. So you'd be going to San Diego to sell them. Sorry.
No, and that's makes sense, and I find it fascinating how transportable the club format is to other markets around the world outside of here in the U.S. And PriceSmart, in my view, has been proof that there are markets that maybe the three U.S. Operators wouldn't necessarily look at that PriceSmart went into, and it has over the course of time proven to be very successful in those markets.
Their largest market has become Colombia over the past decade, and Colombia's population is commensurate with Canada's. It's more or less equal. Costco operates over 100 locations in Canada. PriceSmart operates around nine or 10 locations in Colombia. They have a huge runway uh, in that country, just depending on the economic conditions.
Right. Interesting to see. Last thing I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on is a lot of folks in the supplier community listen to our broadcasts, and if you could give any advice to suppliers trying to sell in to the club channel, what's maybe the biggest piece of advice you would give them for being successful in the wholesale club format, not only this year, but looking forward into the future?
I think there's two items. One, to visit the buildings. It doesn't matter what building you're visiting, but to consistently go into a BJ's, a Costco, and a Sam's Club, and not just walk to your own category, walk the entire building, because packaging is such an important component of the club channel. And there are ideas and concepts and things that you wouldn't imagine in other categories that companies are doing that potentially could be applied to whatever you and your company want to accomplish in the channel. So walk the buildings, walk them all the time. Don't think that you know what's in there. And the second is, don't underestimate their focus on low prices. It's what drives them. And no matter what you read about in the media about Sam's focus on omni-channel, BJ's expanding, adding 20 locations, no matter what is said, that's what they're first and foremost going to talk about, is those low prices.
That makes sense.
Low cost. Yeah.
Yes. Low cost and that leading to low prices.
Yeah, this is what you did for years.
Yeah, and be very, very efficient operator. I think that's the role that packaging plays. Is it makes it easier, you hope, to stock the shelves and keep them stocked, because if the item's pallet driven in that kind of very efficient packaging, it makes it very easy and efficient for them to run their buildings and to keep their prices low.
Oh, sure. There's messaging. So just as an example, Sam's Club allows vendors to put the savings or the benefits that you would get by purchasing this item, like save 11% by purchasing this package of diapers.
Yeah.
And Costco doesn't allow that type of messaging generally.
Right.
So, you get these types of things that you would not normally see by walking the building and all the categories.
Yeah. No, I think the advice to walk the buildings and to see what else is in the building already, and try and come up with cool, neat, differentiated products is probably the best advice, and certainly advice I gave to suppliers when I was a buyer with Sam Club as well. So that makes total sense. And like I have to say, this has been a real masterclass in the club channel strategy, and I really enjoyed talking about not only the industry overall, but some of the things that each operator is doing that's kind of unique, whether the things that BJ's is doing to continue to improve their business now as a public company again, the focus of Sam's Club is put on omni-channel, the margin discipline that Costco has, and things like that. I'm curious, if someone isn't familiar with Warehouse Club Focus and they wanted to figure out how to get subscribed, where should they go?
warehouseclubfocus.com. It's very easy. You could sign up for a subscription or even a trial subscription, and we respond within the day.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us and for talking a little bit about the Wholesale Club channel. It's obviously been a personal joy for me, having spent so many years involved in the format, and have an opportunity to chat with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. It was fun. Thanks.
Enjoy it as well. And for our listeners, if you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share the Digital Front Door with your colleagues. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. For the Digital Front Door, I'm Scott Benedict.